Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Wednesday. That means Epic Comic Book Wednesday, when Michael K. Vaughan and I combine the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage to talk about the comic books on which we have wasted our youths. Uh, and today, like so many other episodes of Epic Comic Book Wednesday, is an exercise, an illustration of the dangers of being a little Billy Budinsky. Because years ago, it's been years now that we've been inflicting these videos on you. Years ago, I saw Mike doing this on his channel and thought, hey, that sounds like fun. So I barged my way in. uh, and he was gracious about it, but he did stipulate that since I barged my way in, he gets to pick what we talk about. And as you know, if you followed the fate of Epic Comic Book Wednesday over the eons, some of those picks have been terrible. Absolutely terrible. And the picks in August this month are terrible, unlike so many other picks, are terrible by design. Because August is the month of Garb August, and Mike and I are both co-hosts of Criminali's satanic event in which we read garbage. We intentionally go out of our way to read trash in the month of August. And there's been plenty of trash comic books, plenty of them. Now, most of those trash comic books, Michael K. Vaughan, as you've seen in the course of Epic Comic Book Wednesday, calls great. Don't get him started on Monster Comics or EC Comics, the only living fan of EC Comics. Don't get him started on any of those things. Most of them he calls great, but some of them even he is willing to admit are garbage, and he intentionally picked them for this month. And this time we are not talking about a comic book on which we've wasted our youth, because he wasn't born yet when this thing came out in the mid-'70s, and I read the first issue. I got the first issue. I was lulled in by a factor I'm going to show you, and thought, I think after page 2, God, this is crap in a bucket. So I didn't read any of the other issues until now. I went back and reread the issues now. The comic book is called Skull the Slayer, and the thing that drew me in was a Gil Kane cover for issue number 1. You have a thumbnail. The logo up there at the top is by John Romita Sr., just like he did all the logos for the time period, including a really nice one for Star Wars. When Marvel got the rights to Star Wars, you got a dumb Carmine Infantino cover, but you had John Romita Sr.'s thumbnail up at the top there with Luke Skywalker. But this drew me in because it's a Gil Kane cover. And, I should have realized what the problem was. I shouldn't have got this first issue because, amazingly, we get a foreshadowing the whole length of the Skull the Slayer series by the fact that this is a bad Gil Kane cover. It's bad. It's a cover in which the hero is sharing space with both a dinosaur and cars in a way that is totally uninteresting and anatomically impossible. So I should have known. I should have known. Gil Kane does a few covers for the length of the Skull. Skull Slayer lasted for just a handful of issues. Nobody liked it. And he does the covers for a few of them. And all I could think when I was rereading it this time around is, these would be minor cult collectible items if Gil Kane had also done the interior artwork. They got a bunch of nobodies to do the interior artwork. Horrible, awkward, stupid artwork. But if Gil Kane had been somehow managed, if there was enough tequila in the world to get him to do the artwork for this loser dog and pony show of a comic, that would at least have cult value. Even I love Gil Kane's artwork. He's I think one of the greatest comic book artists of them all. And that leads me to read and keep comic book runs or series that he drew, even when they are terrible. But nope, we just get bad Gil Kane covers for this. This is a story of a guy named John Scully, whose friends call him Skull, I guess. And it was that automatically pinged me. That reminded me of some of the hope that I had for this issue at first in the mid-'70s, because of course, in my graduating class, there were, I think, 50 John Scullys. So I felt like I'd be coming right at home, but no. The John Scully in this story is a Vietnam vet, recently home from Vietnam. And he's an a-hole. He's a jerk. He's rude and mean to everybody. He is totally sociopathic. He is the living illustration of all of the bad press that Vietnam vets got at the time. What the writer was thinking. The writer who dreamt this up was Marv Wolfman, who can do real horrors. He can write really bad comics that do not stand up to scrutiny from one panel to the next, much less from one page to the next. But even he is better than this. He came up with an idea, a kind of the stereotypical idea that goes all the way back to Edgar Rice Burroughs or before. What if we throw normal contemporary people into a weird alternate world that has where anything goes in this alternate world? You can have dinosaurs, you can have prehistoric humans or Yeti or monsters or aliens or whatever. You can have anything you want in this world. You never know what you're going to encounter. It's a trite, it's a tired thing, but it can yield good storytelling. You can do that. Not in this case, though, because that idea was all that Wolfman had for this. That's all he was willing to commit to, was this. You can feel it when you're rereading these issues, how quickly he loses interest in this ugly mishmash. And he gave way to another writer, Steve Englehart, who was actually really good. Both of them should have known better. Both of them should have known better. One or both of them should have marched into Stan Lee's office and said, you need to cancel this thing. It's dead on arrival. But they didn't do it. A bunch of these things were done ahead of time. Then it was released onto the market, and there was no sales. No one wanted it. No one's interested at all. So if you're Marvel, you sort of have to run those issues. You've already paid the artist. You might sell a few to get back your money. But if there's zero response, and there was zero response to this, much like with so many other duds that Marvel brought out in the 70s, I kept expecting, I've been expecting this whole time that Michael K. Vaughan would bring up Omega the Unknown. If you don't know who Omega the Unknown is, don't worry, because the writers didn't know either, nor any of the readers. I'm sure that holds a soft spot in his heart, and he probably has the $200 hardcover omnibus if there is one of Omega the Unknown. Skull the Slayer is even worse. And in those cases, in all those cases, just like here, you're going to publish those issues. If you've already paid, if they're already in the tank, and months of issues for a title will be in the tank before the first one hits the stands, if you've already got those in the tank, you've already spent money on them. In the 1970s, it wasn't much money, but still, you're going to send them out and hope for sales. And you never know. Maybe a Hail Mary thing. Maybe by the time you've got those issues done, it's traded hands 3 or 4 times. No one's interested in it. Everyone thinks it's dumb. But maybe the readers will like it. And the sales numbers will reflect that, so that you'll return to it. Yay, the epic return of Skull the Slayer. That did not happen. That did not happen. Because there's no one to root for here. The villain is called Slitherogue, and he's not interesting either, or it's not interesting either. None of the story is interesting here. The character of Skull the Slayer is not interesting. He gains his superpowers by stealing a belt, a magic alien belt, off a dead body. Never feels any compulsion about it at all. And the powers that it gives him are incredibly vague. A little bit of extra strength when he needs it, maybe not when he doesn't. So there was no response at all to this thing. So it was promptly canceled. So it's perfect fodder for Garb August. It was promptly canceled. And it was canceled in mid-story. You're not going to pay anybody, not the cheapest artist and colorist in the world. You need an artist, a writer, an editor, an inker, a letterer. You're not going to pay those people, much less the delivery people to get this printed and whatnot. You're not going to pay those people if it's dead on arrival. So it was just cut off in mid-story. And it took a long time. I actually read the first issue, so I didn't know the rest of the story. And mercifully, I completely forgot the character. It's such a dumb character that I was happy to forget it. And then years and years later, there was a Marvel series. I don't think they do anything like this anymore. Marvel did 2 team-up series. Marvel Team Up and Marvel 2-in-1. Where they took 2 of their most popular characters. Keep in mind, this was before Wolverine, or the Punisher, or Venom, or any of the anti-heroes that now run the Marvel stable. This was when their 2 most popular characters were Spider-Man and the Thing from the Fantastic Four. And Marvel just said, well, okay, fans like this, so let's do a team-up series every month where Spider-Man meets a different character, and they have an adventure. And the same thing with the Thing. And I've always been a bigger fan of the Thing than I have been of Spider-Man. I know that's heresy, but I always have been. The Thing seems to be just more interesting as a character. So I was a big fan of Marvel 2-in-1. Loved it right from the beginning. It was very much helped by Gil Kane artwork. But Marvel 2-in-1 seemed to me to have more highlights than Marvel Team Up did. And also seemed to be a little bit more adventurous in terms of who the guest stars are. Although both of them did get adventurous at times. And there was a 4-part story in Marvel Team Up. 4-part stories were never done. At this time, they were never done. Somehow, there was a 4-part story in Marvel Team Up that had terrific Sal Buscema artwork, great Gil Kane covers. That was a high point for Marvel Team Up. But I thought Marvel 2-in-1 had more highlights than Marvel Team Up. And this wasn't one of them. Because at one point in Marvel Team Up, in Marvel 2-in-1, the Thing teams up with Skull the Slayer. Look at this Ernie Chan cover. Thing, behind you! What's the Thing saying? He's not going to bother to turn around, even though if you're a superhero and someone says behind you, you probably do turn around. He doesn't see the Tyrannosaurus Rex there and says, hey, nothing can hurt me. We we go back to that weird alternate reality. The Thing and then Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards. It feels awkward for me to call him Mr. Fantastic. That name was obviously just his idea of what a superhero should be called. It's natural to call him Reed Richards. But The Thing and then Reed Richards go back to this world in order to wrap up a decade-long storyline. And maybe renovate this character that no one cared about. Demonstrably, no one cared about this character. But the writer here maybe thought, why not? Why not? This comic book reminded me that Skull the Slayer had ever existed at all. I'd completely forgotten it. And this issue goes on to the next issue where the Thing teams up with Reed Richards, his old friend, and they wrap up the story. And nobody cared. Nobody cared at all. You should read the letters column for Marvel 2-in-1, where you get one, tie-dyed old hippie saying, "Oh, it's great to see Skull again," and everybody else saying, "No, that wasn't the best issue you ever did, was it?" And that was it. I mean, Skull the Slayer went on. I think he's one of those weird characters that people just don't want to let go. They just don't want to let him go. They want him to be more popular than he is. Like, prepare yourself now, Ghost Rider. Okay, there are these, or the present day iteration. The present day example of that overwhelmingly would be Ms. Marvel, who no character likes. No reader likes Ms. Marvel or the Carol Danvers Captain Marvel. No one likes these characters, so you've got to put them everywhere. So Skull the Slayer's had a subsequent history. I haven't really kept up on it. I'm sure that Michael K. Vaughan has the $200 hardcover omnibus of this crap. I'm sure that he does. He doesn't seem to be able to resist himself when it comes to that. But that was Garb August. Now, I have heard privately from Michael K. Vaughan that even he has had enough of garbage comics for Garb August. So though Garb August has one more weekend, I don't think we'll be doing garbage next week for Epic Comic Book Wednesday. I could be wrong. Omega the Unknown is still hovering out there, but I'm hoping that we go on to something that at least has some meat on its bones. But there you go. I don't think there are any videos on YouTube about Skull the Slayer, but I have now added to that pile. Undeserved attention from this piece of crap. And unlike a lot of the Garb August that we talk about in August, there's nothing enjoyable about it at all. I don't know. Well, I don't know. Mike often has, I think, a more nuanced appreciation of comic book artwork than I do. So maybe he likes some of the artwork. So maybe it had some benefit for him. But definitely not for me. This is the very last time that I will revisit Skull the Slayer. So I'll wrap this up here and we'll meet next week. Thank you, BookTube.